Hi, my name is Emily, and if there's one thing I've learned about life, it's that people will always try to define your worth. Sometimes the worst are the people who are supposed to love you. My mom has always been that person for me. She's sharp-tongued, judgmental, and has a way of turning even small accomplishments into something laughable. I guess some mothers just can't handle the idea that their child might actually succeed. For the past 2 years, I've been waitressing at Sunnyside Diner, a small, chaotic little place where the coffee is strong, the customers are needy, and the work is grueling. But it's honest. It's also my lifeline. Between saving up to pay bills, taking night classes for my career, and learning to stand on my own 2 feet, this job has been both my prison and my training ground. Every tip, every long shift, every sarcastic comment from a cranky customer has taught me patience and resilience. I've learned to keep my head high, no matter what life throws at me. That Monday morning started like any other, trays stacked in the corner, the coffee machine hissing, the smell of bacon frying in the air. But something felt off. I had just clocked in when I noticed a familiar voice behind me. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But no, it was unmistakable. My mom. Arms crossed, lips curled in that infuriatingly smug expression she's perfected over the years. She was standing at the entrance of the diner like a queen surveying her kingdom. "You're still doing this?" she asked, loud enough for the other waitresses to hear. "Serving pancakes and burnt toast? I thought you'd be out of here by now." I froze. My chest tightened, my hands paused mid-pour. I felt my face flush, the heat of embarrassment creeping over me. My coworkers glanced at her, then at me, sensing the tension. I could see her smirk widen as if she had just delivered the perfect insult. She didn't just want to visit, she wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. For a second, I wanted to shrink, to apologize, to vanish into the kitchen. But then, something inside me clicked. I realized that this was my moment. Not to argue, not to cry, but to quietly let her underestimate me one last time. She had no idea that today wasn't just another shift. It was the final act of my small, perfect revenge. I took a deep breath, forcing my hands to steady themselves as I carried a tray of coffee to a table. I smiled at the customers, tried to ignore my mother's piercing gaze, and reminded myself that she had no power over me. Not really. Not anymore. While I worked, my mom wandered around, inspecting the diner, making little comments to anyone who would listen. "Emily, did you wipe down that counter properly? You always seem to rush things. Don't spill that coffee. Remember, you're not exactly the most coordinated." She laughed quietly to herself at every minor mistake she imagined I might make. I kept my composure. I smiled politely, nodded, and made sure nothing spilled, nothing was missed, nothing could give her the satisfaction of seeing me fail. Inside, though, I was simmering with a quiet fury. Every insult, every sarcastic remark only fueled me. She thought she was humiliating me, but really she was lighting a fire under me, a fire that would burn bright until I walked out that door and left her stunned. As the breakfast rush began, I worked like a machine, glancing at her only occasionally to see the subtle satisfaction on her face. She had no idea she was witnessing the last shift of her daughter in this diner. And she had no idea that by the end of today, I would leave not as the girl she mocked, but as a woman who had finally claimed her independence. This was my story, my revenge, and I was ready to write the first chapter of it one order at a time. By mid-morning, the diner had settled into its usual rhythm, plates clattering, coffee brewing, customers chatting, and me moving from table to table with a calm I didn't entirely feel. Inside, though, I was buzzing with anticipation. My mom, oblivious as ever, continued her rounds, making subtle critiques, muttering under her breath. She thought she was in control, that she could humiliate me with every sarcastic comment, but the truth was, she had no idea just how out of her depth she was. See, she didn't know the half of it. While she had been busy criticizing my life choices, I had been quietly building my escape plan, brick by brick. I had been working tirelessly, saving every extra dollar from tips, applying for positions I was passionate about, attending classes at night to improve my skills. And all of that effort was finally paying off. Today, my waitressing days would end. Today, I would step into a future she never thought I could reach. I moved from table to table, pretending to focus entirely on the customers. I smiled as I poured coffee for an elderly couple, refilled ketchup for a harried mom with 3 kids, and offered a kind word to a young man who looked like he'd had a rough morning. Each interaction was perfect. Flawless. I made sure everything ran smoothly. My mother, standing just a few feet away, didn't notice a thing. She was too busy enjoying what she thought was her triumph, watching her daughter scurry around under her invisible judgment. I allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. This was the fun part, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that my mom believed she had power over me, when in reality, I held the real control. She had always underestimated me, and there was nothing more delicious than knowing that her ignorance would only make the reveal of my independence that much sweeter. During a rare lull, I slipped into the kitchen to grab some more orders. One of my coworkers, Sarah, whispered, "Mom's really laying it on thick today." I nodded without looking at her. "Yeah," I whispered back, "but she has no idea." I didn't tell Sarah what I was about to do. This was my moment, my victory, and I wanted it to be perfect, like a well-planned plot in a movie. I returned to the dining area, carrying a tray of fresh coffee, and felt my mother's eyes on me. She leaned slightly forward and said, "Emily, I still don't get it. Why are you wasting your life here? Don't you want something better?" I smiled, carefully choosing my words. "I do, Mom. I've been working towards something better for a long time," I said, making it sound casual, even as my heart raced. "It's just not something you'd understand." Her eyebrows shot up. "Not something I'd understand. Come on, tell me, what's your big secret?" I laughed softly. "Maybe one day." Then I moved on, serving another table with flawless precision. I could see the momentary confusion flicker across her face. She wasn't used to me being calm, composed, and in control. Normally, she could rattle me with a single comment. Today, she couldn't touch me. Throughout the rest of the morning, I continued my work while silently savoring each little jab she tried to throw at me. She mocked the way I carried trays, the speed at which I refilled drinks, even my uniform. Each insult bounced harmlessly off me, and each one fueled my sense of satisfaction. The power dynamic had shifted. She thought she was teaching me a lesson, but she was learning one herself, without even realizing it. And all the while, I kept counting down the hours. Each order I delivered, each table I cleared, each coffee I poured brought me closer to the moment when I would finally step out of her shadow and claim my independence. By the end of this shift, she wouldn't be able to mock me anymore. Not in this diner. Not anywhere. Yes, today was going to be my masterpiece, my quiet revenge, and she had no idea. By late morning, the diner had erupted into chaos. Tables were full, coffee orders stacked up. The kitchen was sizzling with activity, and customers were growing impatient. I had faced busy shifts before, but this one felt different. My mom was here, watching every move I made, her sharp eyes following me like a hawk. Every spilled drop, every slow step, every tiny misstep would have been fodder for her mocking. She leaned on the counter and said, "Emily, hurry up, don't make me wait. Honestly, you're always so slow. Is this really the best you can do?" Normally, her words would have stung. Normally, I would have felt my cheeks burn, my hands shake, my confidence crumble. But today, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. I had a secret she didn't know, and that knowledge made me untouchable. I smiled, nodded politely, and moved faster, making sure every plate, every cup, every order was perfect. I darted from table to table, balancing trays high above my head, dodging customers' elbows, and deflecting complaints with practiced grace. A toddler spilled juice, a customer complained about eggs, and a couple argued over their bill, but none of it fazed me. My focus was sharper than ever. I knew that if I faltered, if I let her see me as anything less than capable, the moment of triumph I had been waiting for would lose its impact. And then, of course, she tried to provoke me again. She picked up a menu and muttered loud enough for me to hear. "I don't even know why they keep you here. You're always rushing, always dropping things. Honestly, they should fire you and hire someone who can actually handle a job properly." I froze for a second, my hand hovering over a cup of coffee. But instead of panicking, I let a small, calm smile play on my lips. Inside, I was almost laughing. She thought she was dismantling me with words, but in reality, she was giving me fuel. Every jab, every sneer, every condescending comment only made me more determined to finish this shift perfectly, and then leave forever. At one point, she actually tried to step behind the counter, as if she could physically supervise me. I didn't flinch. I simply continued taking orders, refilling drinks, and serving food like nothing had changed. My coworkers exchanged nervous glances, but they knew better than to interfere. They could sense the storm brewing, the tension rising, and the fact that I was ready to make my move at just the right moment. I even began to notice the small moments of irony that made the chaos almost amusing. My mom, standing in the middle of the diner, looking important and critical, had no idea that she was powerless. The very skills she had been mocking, the speed, the organization, the ability to juggle chaos, were exactly what kept the diner running smoothly. I could practically hear the universe laughing at her, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. By the time the lunch crowd started trickling in, I was fully in control of my own world. Every order I delivered, every complaint I diffused, every smile I offered to a customer was a quiet victory. She was trying to dominate me with words, but I was already winning in every meaningful way. As I handed a steaming plate of eggs to a customer, I glanced at her. Her face was the perfect mix of confusion and disbelief. I could see the moment she realized that she wasn't breaking me, and that realization gave me an almost intoxicating sense of power. I knew that soon, very soon, the perfect moment would come. I could feel it in my chest, a flutter of excitement mixed with nerves. This was it. The shift would end, and with it, my life in this diner. She thought she was in control. She thought she could humiliate me at will. But she had no idea that everything she had done had only strengthened me, sharpened me, and prepared me for the moment I would finally walk out and leave her stunned. And when that moment came, she would have nothing to say. Nothing at all. By early afternoon, the diner had slowed down just a little, giving me a small chance to breathe. But my mom, oh, she wasn't slowing down, not even a little. She hovered near a table, pretending to look at the menu but really just waiting for the next opportunity to belittle me. I could feel her eyes on me like a pair of lasers, scanning for the tiniest misstep, the smallest mistake. "Emily," she said, loud enough that nearby customers glanced over, "don't forget to check table 6. You tend to forget things when you're distracted. Are you sure you can handle it?" I smiled sweetly and said, "Of course, Mom." And then I moved gracefully toward the table, all the while silently laughing inside. Handle it? I was handling everything, her scrutiny, the chaos of the diner, every impatient customer, and doing it flawlessly. When I reached table 6, the couple sitting there looked frustrated. Their coffee cups were empty, their food was cold, and they were clearly about to complain. I knelt down, looked them straight in the eye, and said with perfect calmness, "I'm so sorry about the wait. Let me fix that right away." Within minutes, their order was corrected, hot and perfectly presented. They smiled at me, grateful and satisfied. I could feel my mom glaring, realizing that her words had no power over the outcome. Then came the subtle fun part, the little small victories I'd been waiting for. My mom had ordered a sandwich, and she had made it clear she was expecting perfection. Normally, I would have dreaded serving her, fearing she would find something wrong and make a scene. But today, I was in control. I prepared her sandwich with careful attention, adding extra pickles, fresh lettuce, perfectly toasted bread, and even arranging it neatly on the plate. I delivered it with a smile, placing it in front of her and saying, "Here you go, Mom. I hope you enjoy it." She took a bite, expecting to find something to criticize. And then nothing. She paused, looked at the plate, and frowned. I could see the confusion building on her face. She had no snide comment ready. She had been waiting for me to falter, and I hadn't. That pause, that tiny flicker of uncertainty, felt like a small, glorious victory. As the afternoon continued, I found more opportunities to turn the tables subtly. A customer had dropped a fork, normally a minor catastrophe in my mom's eyes. I picked it up quickly and handed it back with a cheerful smile. My mom opened her mouth to comment, but I simply nodded politely and moved on. Each time she tried to criticize, I let her words bounce off me. Each time, I silently savored her growing frustration. Even my coworkers noticed. Sarah, the waitress who had worked with me for over a year, leaned over and whispered, "You're doing amazing. She has no idea what's coming." I smiled, keeping my voice quiet. "She won't know until the end," I whispered back. By now, I felt unstoppable. I was in my element, serving, smiling, managing chaos, and quietly watching my mother unravel. It was intoxicating, this feeling of control. Every sarcastic comment she made was just fuel. Every mocking glance was a reminder of how far I had come. And all of it was leading up to the perfect ending, the moment she would finally realize that I had been underestimated, and she had been wrong about me all along. I moved through the diner like a well-oiled machine, cleaning tables, refilling drinks, and delivering food. Every small victory, the perfect sandwich, the smiling customers, the smooth handling of chaos, was a brick in the foundation of my ultimate triumph. My mom had no idea that her insults, her mocking, and her judgment had only sharpened me for this exact moment. And with every step I took, I could feel the tension building. The end of this shift was coming. My mom had no clue that the quiet, composed girl she thought she was humiliating was about to walk out of her life forever, and do it with grace, confidence, and the satisfaction of knowing she had underestimated me for the last time. By mid-afternoon, the diner had quieted down enough for me to finally catch my breath, but my heart was still racing. Not from the work itself, but from anticipation. I kept glancing at my mom as she sat at her table, pretending to be absorbed in her phone, but I could see her tapping her fingers impatiently. She thought she had spent the entire morning humiliating me, but the truth was, she had no idea what was about to happen. Every time she made a sarcastic remark, usually about how she couldn't believe I was stuck here forever, I felt a thrill. Each word, each look of judgment had built me up for this moment. I had rehearsed it in my head for weeks. The way I would calmly finish my last shift, the way I would leave her stunned, and the sense of empowerment that would wash over me once I walked out the door for good. I moved from table to table with practiced ease, balancing trays and refilling drinks, while inside I was counting down the minutes. Today was the day. Today was my grand finale. My mom had no clue that what she thought was just another shift was actually a turning point in my life. At one point, she looked up from her phone and said, "Emily, don't forget I'll be watching. Make sure you do this right." She smiled in that smug, self-satisfied way that always made my blood boil. But instead of feeling intimidated, I felt a quiet, unshakable calm. I had already won in my mind. Every task I completed perfectly, every customer interaction I handled gracefully, was a small triumph that she couldn't take away from me. Then it happened. A minor rush of customers came in unexpectedly, and my mom looked slightly panicked. I handled it effortlessly, taking orders, serving food, refilling drinks, and for the first time I noticed a flicker of something on her face, uncertainty. She realized I wasn't struggling, that I wasn't failing, that her scolding had no effect. And just like that, I knew the time was almost right. I approached her table, smiling politely as I placed a fresh cup of coffee in front of her. "Here you go, Mom," I said softly. "I hope you enjoy it." She took a sip, then frowned slightly. I could almost hear the mental gears turning in her head. Normally, she would have a cutting remark ready, but not this time. I was in complete control, and she knew it, even if she didn't want to admit it. I cleared my throat, letting the moment stretch just a little. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm, "there's something I need to tell you." She looked up, expecting another apology, another excuse, another opportunity to lecture me. Instead, she got this. "Today is my last shift here." For a second, she froze. Her fork hovered in the air. Her smug expression vanished completely, replaced by shock and disbelief. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. I could see her struggling to process the idea that the girl she had mocked all morning, the girl she had believed was weak and incapable, was about to leave her forever in that diner. I smiled politely, keeping my composure. "I've been working towards something better for a long time," I continued. "I'm starting a new job next week. It's exactly what I've been planning, and I can finally move forward with my life." Her eyes widened, and I swear she looked like she wanted to say something cruel, but the words wouldn't come. She had underestimated me for the last time, and it was clear that she knew it. The power had shifted completely. I felt a wave of satisfaction, a mix of triumph and relief, wash over me. All the years of criticism, mockery, and judgment had only prepared me for this moment. And now, finally, I was free. I took a deep breath and felt a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The moment had finally come. Today I would leave the diner and my mom behind, and nothing would ever be the same. My last shift, which had started as another day of humiliation, had transformed into the perfect stage for my quiet, satisfying revenge. I moved through the diner with purpose, smiling at customers, refilling drinks, and clearing tables with the calm confidence of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. My mom sat there, frozen, pretending to read her phone, but I could feel her watching me like a hawk. She had no idea that her control over me had ended hours ago. When the lunch crowd thinned, I approached my manager, Jake, and said casually, "Jake, I'm finishing up my last shift today." His eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what?" I smiled. "Yep, I've got a new job starting next week. Everything's set. Today's my last day." He grinned widely, clapping me on the shoulder. "Finally, you've been holding this in for months. I'm so proud of you." It felt amazing to have someone see the triumph that my mom never could. I returned to the dining area, my apron still on, and walked directly past my mom's table. She looked up, eyes wide, and opened her mouth. I held up a finger and smiled. "Just wait," I said, letting the suspense hang in the air. She had spent all morning mocking me, expecting me to crumble, and now she had no words left. I went to the counter, carefully placing my apron and a small folded note where she could see it. I didn't say a word. I simply looked at her, my calm smile saying more than any insult could. She leaned forward, picking up the note, her hands shaking slightly. It read, "Sometimes the people who mock you the most are the ones who underestimate you the most. Thanks for the motivation." She stared at it, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I could see the confusion, the disbelief, the slow dawning realization that she had lost, not because I had yelled or screamed or embarrassed her, but because I had quietly, steadily, and perfectly reclaimed my life. The customers in the diner noticed her stunned expression, and a few exchanged curious glances. I could feel the energy shift. The power dynamic had flipped completely. My mom had spent years thinking she could control me with criticism, sarcasm, and judgment. Now she had nothing. I waved politely at my coworkers who were quietly cheering me on behind the counter. I smiled at Jake, who gave me a thumbs up. And then, step by step, I walked out the diner door. With each step, I felt lighter, freer, and more confident. I was leaving not just the diner, but the years of mockery, the sting of criticism, and the shadow of my mother's disapproval behind me. I glanced back once as I reached my car. My mom was still standing at the counter, holding the note, her face pale and speechless. She had no words, no comebacks, no lessons to teach me anymore. And that, more than anything, made me smile. The quiet revenge, the one I had been building for years, was complete. As I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, I felt a surge of empowerment. I had worked hard, stayed patient, and handled every challenge with grace. And now the result was perfect. I had won, not by being cruel, but by being confident, competent, and completely in control of my own life. I drove away from the diner, my heart racing with excitement for the future. I was free, independent, and finally unshackled from the weight of my mom's judgment. I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. She had no idea that the girl she thought she had controlled had just taken the first step toward a life she could never touch. The moment I stepped out of the diner and locked the door behind me, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. For years, my mom's criticism had followed me everywhere, like a shadow I could never escape. But today, that shadow finally loosened its grip. I was free, truly free. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I parked at a small cafe across the street, ordered a large iced coffee, and just sat there, letting the reality sink in. I had done it. I had completed my last shift flawlessly. I had handled my mom's relentless mocking without breaking a sweat. I had walked away with my head held high, leaving her speechless in the process. And for the first time in years, I felt pure, unfiltered satisfaction. I couldn't resist texting my best friend, Mia. "Guess who's done with the diner forever?" I wrote. Within seconds, her reply came back. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" I laughed, a light, carefree sound that I hadn't heard from myself in months. Completely, today was my last shift, and let me tell you, Mom had no idea. I recounted the events of the day, The morning rush, the mocking comments, the little victories, and finally, the grand reveal. Mia's texts exploded with excitement, pride, and a few laughing emojis. I felt my confidence swelling with each word. I was no longer the timid, self-conscious girl my mom loved to ridicule. I was a woman in control of her life, her choices, and her future. Later that evening, as I finally made my way home, my mom was waiting. Of course she was. I could see her standing on the porch, arms crossed, face flushed with a mix of anger and disbelief. She opened her mouth, probably preparing to lecture me, to belittle me, or to guilt-trip me. But I simply smiled. I didn't need to explain, defend, or apologize. She had already witnessed my triumph, whether she wanted to admit it or not. I can't believe you just left like that," she said, her voice tight. "You didn't even say goodbye properly, after everything I've done for you." I held up a hand politely, cutting her off. "Mom, I don't need your approval. I don't need your comments or your judgment. I've worked hard, I've planned carefully, and I'm finally moving forward with my life. That's all that matters." Her face fell. For the first time, I saw the realization dawning. She had underestimated me for years, and now the consequences were inescapable. She had no words left, no lessons to teach, no control over me. I had one, not by fighting or yelling, but by quietly, confidently, and deliberately reclaiming my life. Over the next few days, the reality of my new job set in. I started training, learned new skills, and met supportive coworkers who actually believed in me. Every day was a reminder of the freedom I had fought for. I no longer had to tolerate mockery disguised as advice or feel small because someone else thought they knew my worth. And as for my mom, she tried reaching out occasionally, sending texts like, "Hope your first week is going okay," or "Don't forget to call home sometimes." I ignored most of them, not out of malice, but because I had learned an important lesson. My life was mine to live, not hers to criticize. Sitting in my new apartment one evening, I reflected on the entire experience. That last shift had been more than just the end of a job. It had been a turning point. I had faced humiliation, pressure, and judgment, and I had walked away stronger, more confident, and unshakable. The best revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about reclaiming your own power, and I had done that perfectly. For the first time in my life, I felt completely proud of myself. I didn't need anyone else's validation. Not my coworkers, not my friends, and certainly not my mom. I had created my own victory, and it was sweeter than I could have imagined. Weeks had passed since that last shift, and every day felt like a victory. I woke up each morning knowing I was in control of my own life, free from my mom's constant criticism and mockery. My new job was challenging, yes, but it was exciting, fulfilling, and everything I had worked for. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I had built something solid, a life that belonged entirely to me. I could pay my bills without stress, plan my future without anyone's disapproval, and go to sleep at night feeling proud of what I had accomplished. No one could take that from me, not even my mom. Of course, she tried. She called a few times, her tone trying to be casual, like she hadn't spent years belittling me. "Are you settling in okay?" she asked in one text. "Remember to stay humble." I smiled as I read her messages. Stay humble. I realized then that humility was never my problem, confidence and self-respect had been. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. My life was proof enough of what she had underestimated all along. One afternoon, I ran into Sarah, my former coworker, at a cafe. She couldn't stop smiling. "Emily, I still can't believe how gracefully you handled your last shift. I mean, you didn't yell, you didn't fight, and yet you left her speechless. That was epic." I laughed, sipping my coffee. It felt amazing, and the best part, I didn't have to stoop to her level. I just did my job and walked away with my dignity intact. That's the kind of victory that sticks. For the first time, I understood what real revenge looked like. It wasn't about embarrassing someone or making them feel small. True revenge was about growing beyond their reach, proving them wrong, and living a life they couldn't touch. Every time I glanced at my apartment, every time I excelled at my new job, every time I smiled without worrying about her judgment, I felt it. The quiet, unshakable power that came from knowing I had finally reclaimed my life. And then there was the moment that made it all feel complete. One evening, I walked past the diner just to see it again from the outside. I noticed my mom standing at the entrance, looking around like she had lost something important. Her expression was a mix of frustration, regret, and disbelief. I stopped, smiled, and waved politely, but I didn't go in. I didn't need to. The lesson had been taught, and she had learned it, whether she wanted to admit it or not. I walked away, lighter than I had ever felt in my life. That last shift had been more than just a goodbye to a job. It had been a farewell to fear, doubt, and the shadow of someone else's judgment. I had stepped into my own power, and nothing could take it away. As I settled into my new life, I reflected on everything that had led me here. The mocking, the judgment, the long hours of thankless work, they had all prepared me for this moment. I realized that life wasn't about avoiding hardship or people who doubted you. It was about using those challenges to build yourself, to rise above, and to create your own story. Today, I'm proud. Proud of my hard work, proud of my independence, and proud that I never let anyone, not even my mom, define my worth. My life is mine, fully, completely, and joyfully. I didn't just leave a diner. I left behind a chapter of my life where I was underestimated, undervalued, and doubted. And in its place, I wrote a new chapter filled with confidence, empowerment, and freedom. Sometimes, when I think back, I can almost hear my mom's voice from that last morning, but it no longer bothers me. I smile because I know the truth. The girl she mocked is gone. In her place is a woman who knows her value, commands her own destiny, and has finally claimed the life she deserves. And that, more than anything, is the sweetest revenge of all.